So, Jirai, if I think I've pronounced that correctly,
Yeah,
Jirai, could you introduce yourself, please?
okay. My name is Jiraya Bagudo. I'm from West Africa, Nigeria, and I'm a dyslexia advocate. Right.
Excellent. It says in
Thank
your
you.
LinkedIn profile that you're an entrepreneur and a dyslexia advocate, and you also run the 1 in 5 Dyslexia Foundation. Is that correct?
Okay, yeah. I'm a digital marketer by profession, and I have had a um foundation, 1 in 5 Dyslexia Foundation, which I started somewhat about last year. The out of passion because of how I see dyslexic seriously being not represented in from schools and workplaces, and I suffered firsthand because of that, and I felt instead of ranting about it, why don't I start something to fix that problem?
Absolutely brilliant. So, can you say dyslexics aren't well represented, or dyslexia isn't well represented? Is this across Nigeria? And when you say that, what do you mean by not well represented?
Okay, yeah, it's across Nigeria. If I may even stretch as far as Africa, because we have a serious stigma with anything that has to do with some sort of I don't want to use the word brain ailment, but anything that has to do with the brain, there's a serious stigma attached to it here. So a lot of people are in denial. A lot of schools are in denial. They don't want to accept because once you come in and you're trying to, no matter how hard or you try to explain it to them to simplify the whole thing, it always come across as the person is dumb and stupid. We can't take this person to the psychiatric. And there's a lot of stigma to that. So from parents, teachers, everything, they really prefer, it's not a topic they really want to talk about. Or even though they do talk about it, they talk about it feeling sorry for who has it, and they don't believe that they or their kid might have it.
Right. Okay. So they feel sorry for people, and this is because they're seen as somehow broken.
Yes, exactly. That's seen as somehow broken, and that's where the stigma usually comes from because a lot of parents see that their children, when they have been told their child is dyslexic, it automatically translates that their child is dumb, and they usually there's a popular saying in here in Nigeria. Almost every African parent or Nigerian parent has said it is one when your child is not performing well in school, and the person that tops the class, they compare with the person and say he does not have two heads. So if he can do it, you can do it. So they don't really put in context the learning difference and maybe your child needs special attention.
Yeah, this idea that if one person can do it, why can't you do it? And
Yes.
therefore, the
Yeah,
blame is put
exactly.
on the dyslexic child.
Yeah.
Can I ask, are you dyslexic yourself?
Yes, I am. I'm dyslexic and I just learned about that about 4 years ago. Prior to that, I had no idea what dyslexia was.
Okay.
And yeah.
And how did you feel, or what was your reaction to learning that you're dyslexic?
Okay, honestly, at that point, I didn't know what dyslexia was in the first place. And as such, I didn't really know how to feel about it because how I found out was through one of my favorite movie directors, Steven Spielberg. I was watching a movie of his and I just felt, oh, let me Google this guy and see how. And next thing, on one of the article I read about him, they say he was dyslexic. I like grasped for my breath. I thought it was some sort of cancer. I was like, is he dying? And I Googled what dyslexia was. And it was like I was reading a biography about my life. Every page, every article I read just precise was just very spot on. And I shared with my dad. I was in disbelief because we often feel Africans. This is, if I may say, a white man's kind of thing.
Ah,
So yeah, it seemed like that here in part of the world. It seemed that this is white man something whenever from any form of spectrum, ADHD. So they
so
don't really believe it affects Black people or
can you
Africans.
explain what that means? That when you say it's a white man's thing, is that simply because it doesn't affect black people, or is it seen as a social construct from, let's say, Europe or America?
Yeah,
What does that mean?
a little bit of both. I think it comes from most of the times in movies when we see someone have some sort of, it's usually an adult white male. I think that kind of attributed to it. Yeah. So and we never actually have it almost seems like a luxury if you say you have that. It seems like a luxury, like an excuse, and because we are known to be very, very practical. Like if you can't see it, there's a chance that it doesn't exist, kind of thing. So, and but I was glad I showed my dad that I think I have this, and he went through it, and he talked to my mom, and like they saw that nobody knows you better than your parent. Like from when you were a kid, and they saw everything, how I struggled. Every teacher said the same thing: your kid is brilliant, but I think your kid is smart, but and yeah, so it was really a breakthrough for me and my family.
Can I ask how your family responded? How your father or your brothers and sisters responded to this?
Okay, yeah. They didn't really make much of it. They just because over the years, all the dyslexia traits, the dyslexia clumsiness, if I may add, was just that's who Jirai is, and it never really like should I say made me stood out. I was just part of the family. Everybody has its flaws, and those were my flaws. So, and up to now, the only thing is that I think my parents have known how adjusted a little bit in being more patient with me in a lot of things. Yeah, we have a family business where like there are a lot of calculations. I can easily get confused, and luckily for me, my younger brother excels excellently at that. So it kind of took the pressure off of me. So and yeah, so they really know what my strength is and what I can do, and they're really very more acceptable in that right now
Yeah, yeah,
compared
yeah.
before that. Anytime it almost just seemed that I was lazy, I was not being serious, and they had no idea like I put in double the effort just to come short.
It's a classic story of having to work twice as hard just to stop sinking in the water. Yeah. Can you tell
Yeah.
me about your experiences when you were at school? How did so you say that you looked at Steven Spielberg's biography and said that reminds me of me. What were those things? And was it school time or was it outside school or what was that about?
Okay, it was in school. Like, I think it was about it started from what really piqued my attention was from visual thinkers. He said he dreams for a living, he daydreams, he sees all those things. So that was what really reeled me in because that was classic me. And talked about how words you have to read certain lines more than once, and no matter how hard you tried. And the thing is that it's always the thing you're good at, yeah, practically exceptionally good at, and the thing you're not, you suck at it really bad. There's no really I often say there's no really defense with me. It's either I'm very good at this or so. And in school, every teacher, every class really said the same thing. Funny enough, if there is a class quiz, and because I was very good with I had interest in things that were not in the class. So whenever there are like class quiz, a lot of times class quizzes do not interclass quiz, sorry, when a class is having competition with another class or another school. A lot of times the questions that comes from it are not really what you are being taught in class. So I really was good at that. So whenever they're looking for a representation from my class, if I was not on the team, they were not having confidence that they were going to win. But in class, I was scrabbling to the bottom of the class, which didn't make sense to my parents or my teachers. And classic school environment, they felt I played too much extra work, extra curriculum, extra classes. And not, unfortunately, nothing ever changed. Not once did it ever work, not once.
Yeah,
And I
well, I mean,
just,
if they're giving you something that doesn't work and then they give you more of that,
yeah,
it's just not going to work even more.
exactly, just common sense. So, but yeah, and that was how I just keep scraping by through school. But I think where it was really difficult for me was when I was my degree program. I schooled in Gombe State University here, and I read political science, which was a lot of words and a lot of writing. So I really that was something that I could not just understand that in class I could contribute equally, but when it comes to when scripts were shared, even when I write, I was like the bottom half, and my closest friend, he was one of the top students there, he also could not understand that when we talk, we go toe to toe, but once exams comes, like marks, a lot of marks behind him, and we started comparing scripts, and that was when I actually noticed that prior to this, I did not know this. That was when I actually noticed that when I'm writing in exams or I'm writing my essays, I can skip words, I can skip letters, and I was like, how is this happening? And so I think I was not more cautious of that, but it never stopped. It never did.
Yeah, because if you don't know what you're looking at or what you're looking for, you'll never see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same with me. When I found out I was dyslexic, I was shocked, I think. But now I see that I put letters into words that shouldn't be there. As much
Yes,
as leaving
yes.
letters out, I put strange letters into them. Now I can see what I'm doing. But in those days, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, no idea at all.
But what about the teachers? Did they not have an idea? Is there any dyslexia awareness among teachers in Nigeria?
Okay, yeah, I'm really glad about that question, because that question I think was the primary reason one of the primary reasons I started my foundation was the fact that I went through all these processes, not all these stages in my life, not for once did a teacher say, "Hey, I think this kid is," even the ones that are very devoted and were really keen on helping me, not one was able to, because they didn't know what dyslexia is or was. And to top that off, too, as I think a couple of years ago, a governor from my state, Kaduna State here in Nigeria, had a survey, and he asked, and the survey was, he was trying to test teachers' competence. It was an infamous incident in Nigeria where he sacked a lot of teachers. And one of the questions on that survey was, he asked if they knew what dyslexia was. A whooping, I think 97% had no idea what dyslexia is. So we have children going through this system, struggling, they struggle with battles their self-esteem. They have no idea what is happening to them.
Mm.
And they are being in the hands of these teachers. And I'm not trying to put blame on the teacher, because they themselves, they have no idea, they don't know that they need to have this knowledge. And that was where I said, I think this is where I need to do something about it, because I'm going to have a kid, and statistically there's higher chance it's going to be dyslexic as well. I need to start to make the change that I didn't have. And that was one of the primary reasons why I actually went into, because there are a lot of ripple effects, so many ripple
Yeah.
effects that.
So can you tell me what the One in Five Foundation does? Who does it serve? What do you do?
Okay, yeah. So One in Five Dyslexia Foundation actually started from trying to create awareness. But as time goes on, when I keep going in the field, talking with fellow and dyslexic advocates or dyslexic and teachers, and a lot of things, my eyes open to a lot of lapses in educational sector. And we have slowly evolved to from just an awareness foundation, because I thought if people knew what this is, they were going to embrace it with open hands and do what needs to be done. So, but unfortunately, that was not what I found out, and I realized a lot had to be done. So, One in Five Dyslexia Awareness Foundation now, we're not only trying to create awareness, we are also putting in the conscious effort to see gaps in the educational sector and come up with solution on how we could fix that. And we need help from anybody that we can, but primarily we're just trying to address the issue of dyslexia. It's not just about awareness. We're not settling for people to know. Like, solution has to be on the table as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you have networks in Nigeria? Because Nigeria is
Yeah,
a big country, obviously. So yeah.
yes, we do. There's Dyslexia Nigeria. I think that's one of the biggest, and they are like the ones in front. Where we're all like, my foundation just is about a year old, so they have more field experience and more networks, and we are really, most of other dyslexia foundations are really behind them,
Yeah.
and they have the resources to for assessment and the likes. So I've reached out to them, and we have like a WhatsApp group, and we're all discussing on how. But primarily right now, we're really trying to get the government's attention, and they should kind of do something about it. I think that's the first goal on almost every foundation here in Nigeria.
You mentioned a little while ago that there was a minister, maybe a local politician, who asked whether teachers knew what dyslexia was. Does this mean that there is an awareness of dyslexia in the government?
Okay, I won't say so. I just think that he was a governor. He has a reputation of being a very progressive governor in the
Right.
whole. We have 36 state here, so it was just since before and after. I've never had any, like, the government. He was just the one, and when his tenure is done, so we are at the mercy of the next governor. If he's not progressive in that aspect, well, we are back to square one, as we say it here. So I've not really ever heard like the government having a discussion about neurodivergence and having representation both in the workplace. Because, by the way, sorry, One in Five are also trying to look in that area, workplace representation also to make the awareness there. So, but in the government aspect, I've never really like have a seen or come across a conversation talking about neurodivergence. You understand? We have a lot of teachers, school teachers for sorry, school for teachers, and all of them, if they tell you their curriculum, these are teaching institutes, like teaching that you go and spend 3 years, and all of them they say they have never been a topic on neurodivergent kids. So that's a serious problem.
Yeah, which I suppose leads to the one of the big questions. You say you're identifying the gaps. What
Yes.
are the gaps in the system? I mean, is it just a big gap, or are there specific gaps that you've identified?
Okay. Okay, the gaps in the system. I think I'm going to talk about the primary thing is there's the lack of statistics. Like if when we really want to get something done, and I try to do some research on, because I can't just, as much as I'm passionate, I can't just kick the dog, go guns blazing, trying to fix the world. I need data. So, and surprisingly, it's really lacking here in the country, data in that aspect. There's no enough data for someone to grasp and know, okay, this is where the problem is, this is the hit zone, you could start there. And so data is really lacking. And for 1 in 5 for dyslexia awareness, I think that's one of the first things we really want to try and get support to invest in that and have accumulate as much data. And we're going to make it open for anybody, whether individual, an activist or foundation, so that you could tap into these data. And they are there, but they are not much. In fact, I will say they are like very little. So, and that's one, I think, is the data. The absence of data kind of has a lot of ripple effects in that it could really help fix other things. Then another gap is the teachers. Schooling system in Nigeria here. Schooling system here is really a business. If I should be very honest, yeah, it is a business, and they usually make business-oriented moves. So if neurodivergence representation, you can't come up with a way that they could make money off of that, they might not really be interested. Again, which to my point earlier that I said the progressive governor, you have to fall at the mercy of the school owner that is progressive and wants to welcome this idea. Because I have been to schools and the school owners, few of them didn't know what dyslexia was, but there was no form of structure in place or some sort of strategy to implement certain things to cut off the dyslexic student, because doing that is extra to cost more money from the school's pocket and all that. And I think if I'm going to talk about the two gaps, if I'm going to talk about gaps, that's the two major gaps that I really see. And if I could do anything about it, I'm going to start from there. Is to make sure that schools, because schools, I really believe in something with dyslexia, the sensitive place to really address is the school. When you have the school locked down on being neurodivergent, inclusivity and all that, the ripple effect goes wrong, because you have the school, they will tell the parents will look at the child, like the ripple effects again. So I think those two aspects, I'm going to really keep my foot and say that's the major gaps that I see in Nigeria.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned not only school, but the workplace. I mean, what about workplace inclusivity? Yeah. Is there an awareness in the workplace?
Okay, I think the workplace is even doing worse than the schools, because the workplace is a very serious environment. And when you go with the talk of dyslexia or any form of neurodivergence, you will always have people in that workplace that identify, they have these problems, they struggle with this or that. But again, like it still boils down to like the owner or like the head of this particular department or the CEO. They really have zero tolerance, because they just believe it's a bunch of excuses that another, if I may say, European thing, because that's where the problem is. Because a lot of adults don't see this as, they see you as victimizing yourself. They see it like you could get out of it. If I can do it, so can you. And you're just allowing this thing to take over your life and all that. So that really denies the empathy that a lot of dyslexic people need at the workplace, that they could function properly. And this was one of the reasons why I actually resigned from where I was working, because as I said earlier, I learned that I was dyslexic a couple of years ago, and I was at work, and it made a lot of sense how I really struggle.
Sorry, I think we just
Okay.
lost you. You said you found out you were dyslexic a couple of years ago, yeah?
Yeah. Okay. And I was working at the moment, and I just learned that I could not really progress in an environment like this. And that was what really forced me to create my own environments where I could make all the mistakes I want, which the only place is you own your own business. And that was what made me an entrepreneur. I started my company, and as times went on, again, there is not a lot of resources for adult dyslexic. If you go into the internet, most times it's for kids. So I had to really scout the internet from podcasts to try and get tips, and that really helped me. And I was able to gather a lot of coping mechanisms over the years to get where I am now. So, and whenever if I'm hiring or I'm having some sort of, I always look out for that, and I try to be very empathizing with someone that is neurodivergent, because I am, and I have to lead by example.
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the
Yes,
thing. That this lack of empathy that there is.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Serious lack of empathy that I know. And the thing is also, I really think a lot has to be done, because the more you try to explain, the more you seem like you're victimizing yourself. I've been really trying to find a clever way that I could really explain the struggle, the silent struggle that you go through. It's round the clock, it doesn't turn off.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, I miss what. Oh, me too, I miss what sometimes. And you say, no, like, you have no idea. I
Yeah.
mix things up. Everybody do mix things up. You have no idea. And I keep going how I struggle with the most basic of spellings. How when I'm sending a proposal to a client, I'm drenched with anxiety, because in Nigeria here, a lot of people, because of lack of empathy, you make a mistake, it can cost you a job, because they believe they are not thorough and all that. And I often feel like a simple reply and say, hey, fix this, will have been okay. I don't understand why I just didn't spell something correctly, and you just use that to just judge my intelligence and feel like I can't handle this particular project. So I'm really 1 in 5 dyslexia. I really hope over the years we can be big enough to. I really, by the way, if I may put this in, I really love what Made by Dyslexia are doing. Brilliant, fantastic job. And I've been with like my notes, just jotting down certain things I'm seeing working for them, and I hope my organization gets big enough that I could really just copy and paste their strategy and just get a lot of attention from celebrities to talk about this thing, because that's the easiest way people can really pay attention these days, is when an influencer or celebrity just says, I struggle with this too, and it makes a lot of difference.
Yeah. Hell of a lot of difference.